Welcome to It's a New Day. My name is James Young. And today my guest is?
Bolgen Vargas.
And are you originally from Rochester? Where are you from?
No, I was born in the Dominican Republic many years ago, and here I am in Rochester enjoying the weather. What a great weather this is today. What is it? This is March,
Can you
and we're
believe that?
experiencing 80 degrees.
Can you believe that?
It doesn't get better than this. This is a gift for those of us who cannot get to Florida during this time of the year.
Please tell us what it is that you do with the school district.
I'm the interim superintendent for the school district, and I'm enjoying my job, and I'm glad to be here with you.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
I know that you get so many questions about the schools failing and how do we bring up graduation rates and all of those kinds of questions. I would like to be able to approach the situation from a different perspective. I'd like to talk about some of the non-academic reasons why children are failing. From the little research that I did, I found out before, or some of the things that you've done inside the school system, is that you've worked inside doing with social workers and understanding the problems that exist inside many of the homes of children that are coming to the city school district. And my very first question to you is, if you had a magic wand and we didn't have to concern ourselves with money or politics, what kind of school system, what kind of environment would you set up that you think that would be conducive for students to become the best that they could be?
I'm going to say something, and you might think that it sounds cliche, but the word would be love. That would be the magic thing. An environment where children feel loved by everyone around them, by their peers, by everyone who touched them at school, in the neighborhood, in their community. And I do believe that that is a powerful thing that I'm afraid many of students I know feeling the love and support that they deserve in the part of many adults. And that's something that we need to get back, where children feel that they are in an environment where they can achieve their potential. Their potential is incredible. When you give the child the support and the environment that they need to strive, they do. Let me tell you, for example, the Congo environment. Every child will have someone that they feel connected to. The relationship between the child and the adult in multiple places is extremely important. Not just in the school. As important as having a caring teacher is, it's extremely important for a student to feel care everywhere they are. When they're at school, when they're at home, when they're in the neighborhood, and to feel safe. The other things that I think is extremely important is for our children to explore their potential in the arts, music, sport. That is extremely important. We have to make the school exciting, safe place for them to be and learn.
One of the things that I've noticed in talking with students, they feel that if they're not being entertained, that somehow that there's no merit, or they become disengaged in participating in school. Is there a way that we can make this more exciting, education more exciting to them? Can we, and I believe how we can make it exciting is if we can show them inside a future with education.
Absolutely. Acting, learning, and firsthand, and having that kind of opportunity is extremely important. When I'm talking about exciting, is academics, it's exciting. Reading, for example, when you read some great books, like they give us joy. Learning is you have to work hard. It's a function of time and effort and good teaching. At the same time, you also need to tell the child that education is a gateway to success as far as enjoying life, enjoying work, and exploring one's interests. Like, for example, many of our children, when you talk to them, all of them want to be doctor, they want to be lawyer, they want to be engineer, they want to be teachers, they want to be police officers, they want to be, you'd be surprised, paleontologists, career that you never heard before, they are talking about. The question is, what kind of opportunity do we have available to them? And we have to make sure that they feel that this is an opportunity society by providing to them the opportunity that we should be providing them so that they become the individual that they want to be in terms of their career, in terms of as a human being. You don't want to just educate a child to be an engineer, but you also want to educate to be an engineer plus, a caring husband, a caring brother, a caring sister, a caring adult about the civic, the values that have paid off for this nation and for individual. We know that individual, when they have opportunity available to them, they can do great things. And back to your original question, I would like to see our children, for example, we have many youngsters, and they paint me when they say, I want a summer job, and we don't have that job available for that kid. I want to learn how to draw, but we don't have the art classes for them. I want to play baseball, but we don't have the little league in place at the school or at the neighborhood available for them. So although this society, believe it or not, has a lot, we are a very rich society. It's unfortunate that we do have a neighborhood and a school that there are things that children are looking for that might not be available to them. Like, for example, I want to play an instrument during the summer. You know, a kid that lives in Clifford Avenue might not have the resources to take a music lesson during the summer. So can we make it available to those kids, perhaps to extend the school years so that the school would be offered to continue to teach them music, art, sport, swimming, and academics, and just reading and writing. My dream would be that every child will be reading by third grade. We cannot forget that the primary function of education is to teach a kid how to read, and math, and science, and appreciation for the arts and music, and you know, the development of the total person is extremely important for any educational system to be successful. We have to take into account the needs and interests of the child and society. It can't just be about one thing. It cannot just be about my interest. For example, I'm afraid that sometimes we send a message to the youngster: learn math because we need you to be a good worker. That is a good message. But in addition to that, we're going to say to them, by the way, once you use your math to be an engineer or computer scientist or to do great things and that you need math for, you also need to say to them, by the way, develop some kind of interest in sport, art, music, entertainment, and that sort of things, so that the child begin to understand what Plato would call it. For example, if Plato was around today, he would say that education begins with the arts, because the arts allow us to see the human potential and also allow us to enrich our humanity.
Also inside of this equation, because so many parents are much younger parents today, I believe, than ever before. And I know parent involvement has got to be a very important part of a child's education. But if the parent has no education or doesn't see the value in education, it seems like this child loses out. And once again, if we had a wish list, How could we be able to interact with this child coming from an environment like that?
I will begin, my wish will begin that we all need to understand that every family want their best for their kid. And that you are correct. There are times that they don't have the know-how to help their kid move from point A to point B. If you were a person who you didn't learn how to read or is struggling as a reader, it is very challenging for that individual to engage on reading activity with their kid. So what I would say for the school system is how do you design a programs and system and approach in which take into account the needs of the family, and more fundamentally the part that we do need the family to do a good job in educating the child. The family has a primary function of education. The school has the ultimate responsibility for educating the student. However, the school cannot do it alone. And in order to be a strong, successful school, you need the family involved. Sometimes we talk about the students not being ready to learn or to start school, but we also need to acknowledge and realize and support those families that are not ready or equipped to help their child do the job that they need to do. If I have my wish, then I would start with, and this country is one of the few countries in the world, in particular, very unique when it comes to the industrialized nation. We don't have a family policy. You were in the Scandinavian country, and you were a single mom, you have more support to raise a child as a single mom or as a single dad than you will have, let's say, in this nation. Well, I don't need to tell you, we pay more money to the people who take care of our car, and when we park our car, and the people who are park attendants in places like New York City, they get better pay than those who work on daycare. And sometimes high quality daycare is not a guarantee in our community. And yes, we are very blessed in many ways, because also you have a situation where we have a society that still give us a lot of opportunity and in terms of resources. And the question is, how do we use it? And one of the problems right now that we have is that everybody works in isolation. So you have, for example, the best crime prevention is education. We know for a fact that our youngsters that are doing well in school are less in trouble. We know for a fact that adults that have a college education are better off. And we do also know for a fact that children that come from families that have multiple challenges and that need a lot of support, that has an impact, adverse impact on the students. Not that the student cannot learn. All students are able to learn if they're given the appropriate support. So we need to go back and recognize that all children don't have the same opportunity at home, in their neighborhood, or the school. So we need to begin to, with an approach that recognize that and to begin to close that gap. But that's why we like our school to have longer school day. We ask students, please do homework. Then we send them home. Well, if a mom or dad doesn't have the skill set to help the kid how to assist them with the homework, that child might come back the next day to school without doing the homework. Now, in some systems, you still get in trouble for not doing the homework. Is that fair? Probably not. But what we ought to do is to do an analysis. For those students, for example, that are under that situation, we might want to have a homework club and have volunteers and teachers and others that might be able to provide that support because all teacher will tell you that, this whole notion of homework is important. Kids need to work outside the school day. But for those students that are in an environment that has a lot of stress, economic challenge, and other things, we ought to be able to find ways for our school to target their needs of those kids and to make sure that we support them in any way we can.
Earlier on, when we first started, one of the things that you mentioned about we need to make sure that all students are feeling loved, and regardless to if it's in a school environment, their community. I wanted to get back to that because that's one of the things that I have come to realize. I believe that if we could create a culture inside of the schools where we put a lot of the responsibility on the success of students on the teachers, where I believe that if we put that responsibility on everyone, students included, meaning that the culture of a particular school system would be that everybody succeeds. It is the responsibility of everyone to succeed. If you have a friend in this class and you know that your friend is failing in reading, as your friend, as you being a friend to this person, it is also your responsibility to help your friend move forward. So I believe if we had this culture of success where we move together like we do in team sport. In team sport, you win together, you lose together as a team. And I believe that if we had the same thing in the school system, we either fail together or we all succeed together.
Great school have that kind of culture, and we need to have that and work toward that. They have a culture of high expectation of success for all students, not just for some students, for high expectation for all, not just as a slogan, but you see that being demonstrated each day, each hour, each minute, from the cafeteria lady to the person who, to the teacher, to the principal. And yes, you are correct. It has to be a shared responsibility. The student has to feel responsible. By the way, an educational system that doesn't help the student become responsible adult, we have failed. That's part of education, understanding how to own one, take responsibility for one's success. Like, for example, the student need to see that, the teacher need to see that, the parent need to see that. And also, the only thing that I will add to what you're saying, that kind of culture also need to be reinforced in multiple places. But if the school alone is the only place where the student find high expectation, it's not going to work. Also, if it's only the school system that try to teach responsibility, it's not going to be as successful, or it will take the child longer to get there, to become a responsible adult. When a child begins to get the message and expectation that responsibility is important, yes, as your father, I have responsibility to my son, and my son has responsibility to me as his father. I have responsibility to make sure that you get to school. When you get there, you have a responsibility that you sit and go to class and that you listen to the teacher, as long as the teacher is talking to you in a way that is not undignified. And yes, you have a responsibility to listen to any adult that say to you, please come over here, let me talk with you, let me help you. And that you don't have a choice to say to that adult, some of the language that I sometimes hear, and also that adult need to feel that when that child is not responding in a way that is being responsible or accountable, that we as adults can talk to one another and bring that child to a place where we can try to reinforce the message that we need to help that child to understand that adults are in their lives to support them. The teachers is there to help them be supported, to learn, and you need to begin to lessen, the level of tension that sometimes you find when a kid saying, basically, often you hear a kid, I don't like that person. Well, that's okay if you don't like the teacher, but that doesn't mean that you can disrespect the teacher. That's something that we need to work at it, because we will not be able to create a kind of school culture environment unless you have that shared accountability system and mutual respect and appreciation and understanding for each one function of the teacher, absolutely to prepare and deliver an exciting lesson, to engage the student, to communicate with the family. But at the same time, the family has a responsibility that if they don't hear from the teacher, from the school, or if they move, we need their address. Because often, for example, in terms of communication, you send the letter home, the letter got home to an address that the family have already moved. So we need to be accountable to each other, and also we need to have high expectation for our children in multiple places, at the school, the community, and yes, at home.
I also like to talk about empowerment. I think that this is one of the biggest problems that we see inside the schools, or we see with young people in general, not just in the school system. Empowerment consists of three components. There's power over, power with, and power to. Now, naturally, the first one, power over, has a negative connotation, but this is the position that most adults are with young people.
Correct.
Teachers have power over.
Correct.
Adults have power over. Government, faith-based, all of these where adults are, we have a tendency to have power over young people. In other words, we're telling them what to do, how things should be.
Correct.
And sometimes, not only do we power over, but sometimes we overpower them.
Correct.
We have to now develop a way that we can now begin to have power with. And I believe inside the school system, if we can develop a way where we can share power, allow the students to be powerful inside the classroom, not disrespectful, but to allow them to be able to be assertive but not aggressive, to be able to learn how to voice their points of view without becoming aggressive in trying to do that. And from power with, I believe now we can show them how to give power to other people as well. On this wish list, could we include that inside this if we could find a way to get education to allow us to do that?
Absolutely. Good education, good school, try to teach the student the difference between those three forms of power and empowerment. And most of our children, my wish list, we begin, every human learns through mimicking.
Yes.
And what we see. By the way, we don't just learn by reading, we learn by seeing.
Exactly.
Most folks don't realize that. What our children see, unfortunately, sometimes if they see the two of us being disrespectful to each other, or me as your boss, treating you without dignity, it gets in the way. Or when they see us adult parents, mom and dad fighting, or dad overpowering, over controlling, spouse or sister or whatever, all of that is absorbed by the child. Sometimes the child bring that into the school, and sometimes the school a good school system try to help that child. It's very difficult though, because let me tell you that when a child said that aggression is the form to solve problems, then you have, and many people have done study about that when the school culture, for example, is one in which try to nurture that child, when that child comes to school after the first 5 years of their life, if they have lived with aggression rather than solving problem by dignifying you opponent, if you will. Even when you play sport, I mean, human nature, I don't know what you view human nature is, but you get them now to the whole notion of the human nature and power. You know, I don't want to go into philosophy here, but a lot of this depends on you view human nature. And my view of human nature is that we have the ability to be kind, gentle, to be share power. Or we have the ability, and we see that in our political system, where we try to control one another. And you have seen entire nation that have ruled their people through control. And also historically we know that when people try to control, use power to control, that is not the most effective way of having an effective society. And for that matter, it's not the best way to have an effective educational system. An effective educational system is where everybody feel dignified. And sometimes we communicate that in a way that is unconscious. Like, for example, how do you relate to the person that work in the school? I said to my students that there's dignity in all work. Therefore, that the person who, for example, to use an old cliche, who cleaned the floor, is entitled to health care. And it's also entitled for me to say, please, will you come here? May I speak with you? Rather than Johnny or so-and-so go and pick up certain things in the corner. Children get a message from that. They also get a message when the family is struggling. My dad works at a factory. He or she doesn't have certain economic powers, because we use economic here. Actually, it's a powerful component. You can't talk about power in this society, or in any society for that matter. We are talking about economic power. So you're touching on a very complex issue, the issue of power. How a good education system, we begin by the time that kids graduate, understand the meaning of power and how to use it at home, in the community, in society, and now we have to include the world. Exactly. Because we now no longer are working in isolation. People right now have all kinds of power, and power can be used to be destructive, to do great things. Nation or individual have used power for positive, as a positive force, or as a negative force. Historically, we do know, and we go back on history. Take, for example, the power that government have over their citizen. You know, the best form of power is by consent. In a society like this, we do believe that, although there are people who will argue to you that power is concentrated in the hands of few. So let me just conclude by saying that I believe that you want to teach children the meaning of power and also the meaning of democracy. In a democratic society, at a political level, we all have responsibility to one another, including the distribution of power. And that includes economic power. Because in a society like this, you cannot talk about true democracy. We are talking about economic democracy. Exactly. What do I mean by that? Is that we do know that the poor many of them, we know for a fact that they don't vote as often. And people sometimes have all kinds of theories for it. I will subscribe sometimes, and they study that being done, that depends if you have 1.5 miles to get to, or 2 or 3 miles to get to your polling booth. And in some part of this nation you had that you might have a challenge. Because for me, I get in my car and get there. Some people had to take a bus, or they had to walk. And, I'm not putting it as an excuse. I mean, I believe the civil rights and this history is very rich to talk about when a group of people are determined to use democracy, the voting power, that is powerful. As you know, it wasn't long ago that women couldn't vote. And they did work hard and continue to work hard, African Americans and other groups. Many of them were left behind using political power, which is another form of power. But our children need to understand all that complexity. Now, I believe that all our students should be participating in a service learning by the time they finish high school. In other words, they have to volunteer and experience how society works, political, social, economic, and cultural. And it would be nice if by the time that you finish your high school experience, you have an understanding of how we got to where we are, and also understanding how society works in terms of power, and why it's so important to pay attention to it. And the number one reason is because it could be destructive or it could be constructive. And the question is that you have to have an understanding of human nature, because human nature is capable of both. And the child needs to understand that, in my view. It's back to the old question, are we good or bad? Or are we both? Or that we have the potential for both? And those are the kind of things that I think a good education system allow the child to begin to reflect, to ask great questions. The Socratic method have been proven to work. To this day, many people still use it, questioning. It's a very important thing. If I have power, it's an interesting question to ask a child. If you were President Obama, what would you do with that political power? What would you like to do? Mm-hmm. I mean, some people will say, if I had that power, you know what they will say. I'm afraid what they will say. But the bottom line is that it's an interesting question to pose.
I would like to, within the line of empowerment, as well, talk about the culture of everyone succeeding. In the classroom, if a student is seen working with another student, it's called cheating. But in the adult world, when you work with another adult, that's called collaboration.
Cooperation.
Can we begin to develop a way with inside education where we could have collaborative efforts? Once again, I come back to the idea that if students help each other, I think that brings a certain richness.
Yeah.
I believe if the student isn't finding love at home, they could find that love, that support, that nurturing from a fellow classmate. Mm-hmm. And I believe that if we could have more of a collaborative approach, allowing students to work inside the framework of a classroom where the teacher would allow that to blossom, being able to keep it so it doesn't get out of hand, to make it so, and to be constructive, to be there to oversee it, but to be able to allow students to really blossom and bloom with each other.
Absolutely. Cooperation is extremely important, and we are doing more of that. Okay. You might be surprised when you come to our schools how much we're trying to emphasize that. At the same time, you also need to recognize that there's a need for the individual to do certain things
Exactly.
in a collaborative way, and also there are certain tasks and functions, like for example in a democratic society, you want to, when you make the decision, to take personal responsibility for it, as well understanding the meaning of shared responsibility. Like for example, if I'm doing well, do I have a responsibility toward my fellow man? That's cooperation. I also had to say to myself, do I have to, if you raising children, can everything be done in cooperation? Well, there are kids, for example, great musicians are one of those that they just want to practice their drum. And by the way, they don't even listen to the past. Although when you hear the sound, you recognize, because they might not be acknowledging that they heard it from, the jazz, the drum tradition. But at the same time, you do know that the human have a need for the individual gift that each one, every person is a gift, every life, and it brings unique talent. And we have to have an appreciation for that and an understanding and being able to balance the need to teach children to be collaborative at the same time that not to be afraid, to break away from the norm. We've seen that by few individuals. Frederick Douglass, for example. Oh, I'm glad that he didn't cooperate, right? To learn how to read.
Exactly.
He didn't cooperate. So when we teach this thing, we have to also teach them that meaning. We have to be very, very, very careful. Because sometimes you take complex concepts like collaboration and individualism. So how does that, you break that down for the child at a very early age so that by the time they reach high school, they are at a level. And I seen that. One of the things that I do is talk to a student. Boy, do I love that. Because I sometimes ask them crazy questions. Like for example, I could tell a lot about a child when I say, if you were the president, what would you do? They could reveal something about that is very deep about human nature, which they could be a little greedy or a little selfish. Or they could say, well, I would buy a house for my family, something like that, because I have money. Now you see now the cooperation. Now the child is expressing a value of cooperating with our family, which is how very human nature tell us, how sometimes they say that it's not saying that you share, that you collaborate, but it's very revealing when you ask a child a question, and then let's break it down. Why is that, Mary, that you want to buy a house for your family? Oh, because I love my mom, and I want her to be comforted. Now, notice the child didn't say, I want to be comforted. Now, when I was 10 years old, you would ask me that. I would say, well, I want to own a baseball team and play at the same time. Now, that's just about me. Now, but you could break that down a little bit, and then you can say, why is it you want to play baseball? What is it you want to do that? And why is it you want to buy a baseball team? If you had a lot of money, or you were the president, you could do anything you want. It could reveal a lot. It could reveal about my interests. Could reveal all kinds of things. I could reveal that, the first thing that came to my mind, perhaps it was about me, which is not necessarily bad, because you got to take care. We tell people to be self-sufficient. It's part of our own. It's very American, although people, we argue both ways. There's no such a thing as an individual that is self-sufficient, because we learn very fast if you're ill. Even if you have money, you depend on a lot of people to help you get through your illness, including if you have faith. That might be a dependence, because our fellow human beings give us our sources of faith and comfort, and but those are great conversations. Great school have great conversation take place inside the school. There's not a lot of argument. There's not a lot of conflict. This type of conversation take place, believe it or not, I give you comfort, in our school system. in those schools that are doing well, you go to classroom and you hear great joy. The teachers and the students are having incredible conversation around, some of the things that you and I are talking about. Yes, and you see great lab, people learning chemistry, learning math, and learning science, learning good literature, learning to write, read, and so on and so forth. But a good education system or school get to this type of question. And they do have this kind of conversation. However, let me go back. It should not be just on the school. The school cannot do it alone. Right. The school cannot be the only place where you have great conversation. Because the child also, when I tell parents, I say, what should I do for my student? Be with them, talk with them, eat with them. That by itself, you know what I mean? You don't need a textbook to tell you about the fundamentals. I don't know how to read. I say mimic. Get the newspaper from your neighbor after they read it and bring it home. And, just they don't research that by examples when we teach. Yeah. So if you have one kid to explore this type of question and to think about this kind of issue, you have to ask them questions and you have to model it for them and you have to teach them by example. And guess what? If you try to take them there, you get to have those great conversations with all our children, regardlessly of their socioeconomic condition or regardlessly of where they live. I could go right now and demonstrate to you that I could have great conversation with kids in Clifford Avenue around this topic. And the reason I say this is because sometimes we don't think that our children are capable because we see our children modeling or exhibiting bad behavior. And sometimes we have to be careful not to confuse behavior with potential.
Very good.
Our children have tremendous potential. And we, in the Rochester City School District, we're blessed. We have students going to all our great university and great places. Yes, they go to excellent college like Monroe Community College, Brockport, the SUNY school system. And yes, we have kids going to Harvard, Stanford, Cornell, University of Pennsylvania, Dartmouth, MIT. Right from here. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I would love to see in this community is to teach about the human potential. The potential of our children are enormous, particularly if we help them explore their own uniqueness, their curiosity, and teach them skill set that are valuable, to them. Every human being has a need to explore their potential. But we also know that as a society, we could be less nurturing than what we need to be. And we also know as a family, we know that the potential is there not to promote. In multiple places, everywhere, there's the potential, the danger, as I call, not to realize the potential of the child, to see the potential of the child. And it's a job that everybody needs to do, to help the kid. There's nothing more empowering than to get in touch with your potential. The human potential is enormous. I mean, people would tell you that, the average person or even the most intelligent individual is not realizing their potential. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Einstein would have lived 10 years more. Or, this great thinker, or people who have done great things. I also wonder what would the United States of America be if Martin Luther King was still alive today. He'd be in his early 80s. What would have he done? That's a great question, right?
Exactly.
Because as you know, his tragedy at age of 39. Look at how much he accomplished. But one of the tragedy also was the potential that was lost.
Exactly.
And I believe there's no question in my mind that we'd be better off than what we are today. Because I think his leadership was based on values. You know, when people tell me they love Martin Luther King and he's a hero, and he is, I sometimes listen carefully, but I like to see, do they dignify all people, regardless of where they come from, what language they speak, what socioeconomic they come from. You know, Martin Luther King taught us to love the enemy. I mean, he learned that's no new concept to him, and he's very frank about how he was influenced by the Gandhi and India. So back to Martin Luther King. When I go to our school and our neighborhood and see ourselves talking to one another, I wonder, what did we learn from Martin, from Dr. King? You can't tell me that you learned anything from Martin Luther King and not to treat each other with respect.
Exactly.
And not to believe in the human potential.
One of the things that I wanted to do is to talk to you about when you were talking about reading. What are some of the things that we should have in the schools reading? I'd like to be able to see more things that pertain to their reality. A lot of the things that students are reading now or don't want to read. For instance, like the classics. I was dealing with a school in Atlanta. They didn't want to read the classics. They didn't want to read the Odyssey and things.
Yeah.
They wanted to read things that were closer to their world. Would this be something that we could include?
Absolutely, and we're doing more and more, but we have to be careful not to understand. Like, for example, if you were to, with a child, to talk about this issue, you would begin to say to them that there's a continuum here, that the reading of the classic has values, because we need to understand our past. It's important in terms of literature, art, music, and everything. Can be a great musician if you want to be a jazz musician and you don't go in and go back to the 1920, you know, Harlem and places like that, and begin to see what people were doing around that time with music. So we need to be careful that we also teach. What is important is that a child has a curriculum that reflects their experience. That is extremely important. What do I mean by that? For example, an African American child at school ought to be able to read about their great heroes, you know, throughout history. It should not be basic on limited to just what is also to the life experience of that child. But what happened to the life experience of Frederick Douglass? Are they valued to learn from it? Yet that child is not living in a slave society, but can he or she learn and relate to the experience of Frederick Douglass? I think we all could. So we have to be very careful, because I could tell you that you would not be able to call yourself an educated person if you don't have an appreciation and understanding for learning about the past. And that learning and the potential for learning is not just limited to one's own experience, or if you only concentrate on the so-called what's relevant. I don't know. I could tell you that I could carry a conversation with you around some of this question because I have read some of the work of the past. You know, someone asked me once, well, how come you know that? I said, well, I read it. I said, well, where you read it? Well, I read the New York Times every day. And in the New York Times, you know, I learn about what's going on right now in Mozambique, in the Congo. You know, what happened, what are the struggles that are going on right now in the Middle East? Although I live in Rochester, in the neighborhood, does that relevance for me? Sure it does. Because what happens if our nation gets into conflict? And by the way, not only that, if I want to get out of my own situation, how would I get out if I don't look at the other side or read about other things? So reading to me had to be a rich curriculum. It's relevant, but yes, part of being relevant is understanding the past. And it doesn't limit you. For example, if I had a situation, I normally answer this question in a very simple way. Say, just read. You ask President Obama, what was the 10 books that you read that you find more interesting, that influence your life. You will find books that were written by Hemingway, and yet he probably, because he has a lot of faith, despite what you hear in the political system, that he understands the Bible. You know, people say to me, the Bible, well, yeah, it's a book. It was written long time ago, right? So are we telling our children that they shouldn't read the Bible, the Quran, or any other historical document because it's too old?
Okay.
That's an important question,
Exactly.
which I ask our children. And I also hear that from leaders in our community. Absolutely, they need to learn about their life experience. But the education is not about limiting yourself. Education is expanding. It's about exploring your own potential beyond belief. We have failed the kid if we limited them.
I totally agree. And with that, because I know that your time is limited, I believe we can come to an end. I appreciated you coming here to share your ideas with us. And perhaps as we move further on and perhaps maybe we can secure you permanently into this position, maybe we can begin to start going from what if to what truly is. Thank you so much for coming.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is James Young. I'll see you next week. Be blessed. And remember, it's a new day.